Ambulance services, the patient breathing?
Well, I am breathing, obviously you can hear me on the phone. Ass.
Alright, you're going to abuse me, or you're going to be helpful
No,
and give me the address?
I'm not going to abuse you, but are you don't ask me stupid questions, you dumb Ask me the questions that are appropriate. Ask me them now, you stupid
We get abusive calls every day, every shift, at least 1 per 10 calls, if not more.
Job came up and I recognised the address. And I said to my colleague, this is where I was assaulted.
The ambulance service and other emergency services are there and designed to come out and support you at the time of need. What we don't expect to be subjected to is an assault, whether that's verbally or physically.
I have felt like I've wanted to leave. I've had a really bad call, abusive call. They were just shouting at me, screaming at me. There was nothing I could do. I felt useless, I felt helpless, and I just said, I can't take any more. I took my headset off. I just put it down on the desk and I just said to the supervisor, I'm so sorry, but I can't carry on talking to these people because there's nothing else I can do for them. And I went out into the quiet room to have 5 minutes, and then the supervisor followed me and said, are you all right? You know, how are you feeling? And I was shaking. I was a nervous wreck. And I ended up having to report it to the police. It wasn't just shouting at me and that, it was proper like effing this and effing that. It was like, where's my effing ambulance, you effing useless, and all this. Like, it was awful. And it was, not only did it make me feel little, and I did feel useless because there wasn't anything I could do, but he didn't need an emergency ambulance at that time. He wasn't that poorly, clearly, because he was screaming at me. If I ever get him again, I'll know him straight away. I'll know his voice straight away. You know, and it's just, it does haunt you. It does get to you, but you just got to get on and keep going.
Job came up on the screen of, I think it said assault from the police. The patient had been tasered and had fallen through a glass table. So the police had requested us to assess his injuries. On arriving on scene, there was a number of police vans and some officers outside who explained to us that the patient had been quite verbally and physically aggressive towards the police. On entering the property, the patient was on the floor and he was handcuffed, and a couple of officers were restraining him. I explained to the patient that we were from the ambulance service and here to help, and nothing to do with the police. We were here to look at his injuries, and he seemed to calm down a little. So I decided to go a little bit closer because he did have quite a few facial cuts, at which point he spat all over me, blood, saliva, which went all over my face. And he then laughed and said, I'm HIV positive and I'm Hep C, which I don't really know how to explain how it made me feel, because we were there to help. And I didn't really realise at first how I could possibly be affected if he had passed something on to me. And a couple of weeks after, I cut my hand at work on one of the oxygen bottles and bled quite heavily. And my colleague who I was on with at the time went to grab the bottle, and I freaked out, like, because I didn't want her to touch my blood just in case I was infected and passed something on to her as well. I don't think people realise how often things like this happen. I wouldn't say things happen every week, but it's pretty regular. I would say a month doesn't go by when you're either verbally or physically assaulted in some way in this job.
I was sent to a Category 1 emergency. So a Category 1 emergency is defined as one that is life-threatening. But as I approached the patient, I managed to get him safely out of the road to the side of the road, where I started to introduce myself as Andrew, a paramedic from the ambulance service, and I managed to get the male sat down. Very shortly after he sat down, I saw a complete change in his body language, almost that of an immediate awakening, and then he immediately jumped up and started to attack me. This obviously took me quite by surprise, because it wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting a patient who was significantly poorly, perhaps suffering from injuries by being hit by a car. So once he started to throw punches at me and start to fight with me, it came as quite a shock. I immediately pressed my panic button, which I had on my jacket at the time, and that alerted ambulance control that I was in trouble. It was at that point that I fell into the road and landed off the step, banging my head and neck onto the floor. Luckily, I fell directly in front of my rapid response vehicle, which had parked up on the opposite side of the road and left the blue lights flashing. Otherwise, I would have fallen into oncoming traffic and probably sustained far more serious injuries. But at the time, an off-duty police officer was passing on his way to a shift, who stopped for assistance. The only reason he stopped, he said, was because he saw the blue lights flashing on the car parked in the middle of the road. But more importantly, once he glanced into the road, he saw me rolling about with a patient being attacked. John, one of my paramedic colleagues, was also on the ambulance. When John arrived on scene, he saw me rolling on the floor with this male, trying to defend myself from being punched, and at which point John got out to try and assist me and the off-duty police officer. It was during that assistance that John also managed to get injured and sustained a break to one of his hands. I'm very dedicated to ambulance service, and my entire life and career role is dedicated to helping other people. So spending time off work after the assault was quite upsetting, but more importantly, frustrating for me, because I really wanted to get back onto the front line and help individuals, which is pretty much written into my job description. Referring back to the incident itself, even after sustaining the assault, myself and John still continued to treat this individual, despite the fact that it subjected us both to some serious injuries.
We're trying our best. We're there to help you. We're not there to get abuse. We're human too.
It's part of the job, but it shouldn't be, should it?
Stop abuse. Get behind 999.
Stop abuse. Get behind 999.
Stop abuse. Get behind 999.